Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really hitting the accelerator on a fascinating set of source material. This deep dive is, well, it's pretty much custom built for those of you whose minds feel less like a neat filing cabinet and, more like a constantly moving idea-generating machine. You're highly adaptable, you communicate brilliantly, and you're definitely ready to master your career and finances. If only you could stop getting, well, catastrophically bored. So our mission today, looking at the research we've pulled together, is to figure out the core strategies. How can a mind defined by this kind of intense mental agility not just survive professionally, but actually thrive? We need to turn that potential instability into a genuine superpower.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is that the sources, right away, they paint this picture of your mind as a, quote, superhighway of ideas, information, and curiosity. And that's the core paradox, isn't it? Your greatest gift, this ability to adapt, to master communication, it's also the source of your biggest challenge. Sustaining focus. It creates huge amounts of movement, but without some structure, that movement can just become distraction.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that a bit. Our data is very clear that this kind of personality is uniquely equipped to thrive in dynamic fields that change fast. But we need to pin down why. Where does that incredible communication strength really shine? And how does it translate into, serious professional value? Professionally speaking, our sources confirm your biggest value is acting as a kind of translator. You're defined as the storyteller, the networker, and the crucial bridge, connecting specialized knowledge with everyday people. That ability you have to absorb complex stuff, synthesize it, simplify it for mass consumption or for, say, executive decisions. That skill is incredibly rare.
Mm-hmm. And that translator role, it points directly to where you should probably be looking for opportunities. The data specifically mentions high-level roles in fields like marketing, media, journalism, sales, tech adoption, consulting, too. The key thing seems to be any career that involves gathering information, synthesizing it, and then sharing it. That's described as your professional playground. And that's why we often see highly adaptable people drawn to things like fractional executive roles or, sophisticated consulting gigs. They're constantly interpreting the world for others.
Yeah, I think that connection is absolutely critical. When you look at the modern economy, the most valuable professional currency isn't just deep specialization in one tiny niche anymore. It's really the ability to pivot, to learn new skills quickly, kind of on the fly. Your fluidity is actually your superpower. While some people see constant change as instability, for you, it's a competitive edge. It's how you stay engaged, relevant, and frankly, ahead of people who are rigidly stuck in old ways.
But, and there is a but, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that superhighway mind, while brilliant, it does have what the source material calls a shadow side. That incredible need for novelty, it struggles. It struggles profoundly with routine, with consistency, and it harbors this deep-seated fear of being tied down to any one project or place for too long.
Right, that fear of stagnation.
Yeah.
It feels very real, and you can see how it could sabotage promising careers. Our sources are incredibly blunt here. They call the idea of doing the same thing every single day for the next 30 years your absolute worst nightmare. So does the data suggest this means you're inherently a poor long-term investment? Or maybe an unreliable team member?
Oh, not at all. But it does mean you're organized differently, perhaps. That emotional aversion to repetition, that's often what causes the job hopping when the initial buzz wears off. Or it's why brilliant ideas turn into 5 exciting projects started with huge enthusiasm, but they never quite get finished. The problem isn't a lack of capability, it's more a lack of, let's say, structured challenge.
Okay, so the conclusion seems pretty clear then. The goal isn't to build that traditional corporate career ladder. To this personality type, that probably feels like a cage. We need to think about building more of an exciting, multi-tiered jungle gym, something that demands constant motion, varied input. We need a strategy that fully embraces this multifaceted nature instead of trying to, stuff it into one restrictive box.
Exactly. And before we dive into the structural solution for this, how to actually build that jungle gym, if you're finding this deep dive helpful, if it's helping you connect the dots about your own way of working, please just take a quick moment to like this video, maybe drop a comment with your biggest career insights so far, and definitely subscribe for more in-depth knowledge delivered right to you.
All right, let's get tactical. Let's introduce the solution that our sources seem to advocate for almost religiously, the portfolio career. This advice really pushes back against the traditional single-job mindset. Instead of forcing yourself into one box, you strategically build a career that has multiple distinct boxes.
And the sources are great because they go beyond just theory. They detail how this actually works in practice. You have to consciously design variety into your professional life. So think about being maybe a highly paid independent writer for a niche publication while also consulting part-time on marketing strategy for a startup and maybe teaching an online course based on your expertise. That kind of mix.
Yeah, and that portfolio structure, it isn't just a strategy for getting multiple income streams, though that's part of it. The sources explicitly say it's essential for your mental well-being. For the highly adaptable person, boredom isn't just a minor annoyance. It's the real career killer. It kills confidence, too. If you can move between different roles, learn constantly, you stay energized.
Right. But here's where perhaps the pushback comes in. While that flexibility sounds amazing, the highly adaptable mind sometimes overlooks the sheer administrative effort needed to manage a portfolio career. You're essentially running 3 or 4 small businesses at once, and that takes immense structured discipline, things like invoicing, client management, negotiating contracts. It's work.
That's a fair point, absolutely. But maybe that discipline's just the cost of freedom. The ideal structure has to allow for constant learning, tackling different projects, meeting new people. What the data seems to suggest is separating your roles, maybe into anchor roles, stable, high-value consulting that kind of funds everything, and then tether projects, which are shorter, exciting, learning-focused gigs that keep the boredom away. You need that mix of connection and autonomy.
Okay, so if we pivot now from career structure to personal finance, that multiple stream approach is fantastic, obviously, but that inherent curiosity, the thing that drives the superhighway mind, it also creates a major financial hazard, shiny object syndrome, which raises a really important question. How do you manage that thrill of novelty? The new investment scheme that sounds amazing, the latest expensive gadget, the 11th online course you probably don't need. How do you manage that without wrecking your financial stability?
This is where it gets really interesting. Our sources offer a super practical, immediate tip for this exact impulse, the 72-hour rule.
Yeah, it sounds deceptively simple, doesn't it? But the psychology behind it is actually quite profound. When you feel that intense novelty-driven urge for a non-essential purchase, something you want but don't strictly need, you have to impose a mandatory waiting period, 72 hours. The data shows that just by waiting 3 days, the emotional high, what psychologists sometimes call the effective forecasting error, predicting how happy it'll make you, it cools off. You move from the fantasy of how this item will change your life to a more rational decision. So discipline here isn't really about denial. It's about delaying gratification until your rational brain catches up.
And this rule seems essential because the adaptable mind is brilliant at justifying novelty purchases, framing them as necessary investments for future projects, even when they're really just distractions. The 72-hour rule forces some accountability onto your own creativity, doesn't it? Looking forward now, the data strongly suggests that truly maximizing your potential relies heavily on finding the right strategic partnerships. If inconsistency and maybe sometimes the failure to complete projects are the shadows of this brilliant mind, then collaboration is a structural light that can balance it all out.
Exactly. Let's detail that power dynamic. The adaptable mind needs to recognize where its genius truly lies, often in ideation, in communication, but maybe not always in the grinding day-to-day execution. So collaborating with someone who does possess that steady focus, that crucial follow-through that you might sometimes lack, well, that can be an incredibly powerful engine for both of you. You, the adaptable one, bring the brilliant ideas, the vision, the communication strategy. That's your zone. Your structural partner, on the other hand, brings the organized system and the structured plan to actually make it happen. And this is critical because it lets you delegate the tasks that feel tedious, the completion, the maintenance, the very things that would otherwise lead you to boredom and potentially abandoning the project. You're essentially delegating your personal frustration points.
So what does this all boil down to for the overall professional journey? The sources argue pretty strongly that the path isn't about finding one single road and just rigidly sticking to it. The real winning strategy seems to be about skillfully navigating a network of interesting roads, that portfolio career idea again, and making sure your brilliant mind is being monetized effectively every step of the way, keeping you stimulated but also financially successful.
That's a perfect synthesis, I think. The key takeaway really is recognizing that your adaptability is your greatest asset. But like any asset, it requires structured outlets, things like the portfolio career that embraces variety, and also practical financial safeguards like that 72-hour rule, just to keep the financial side effects of your restless curiosity in check. Embrace the motion, but build the tracks first.
Right. And here's a final provocative thought for you to maybe chew on until our next deep dive. If your mental well-being is genuinely tied to having multiple streams of income and constantly rotating through brilliant ideas, who is the structural focus partner or maybe partners you need to collaborate with right now who can help transform your best current idea from just a fascinating concept into a completed, functional, and yes, profitable plan? Go find that anchor. We'll talk soon.